Welcome to the Community Sense podcast. I'm Tricia Northeast, and I'm all about helping people feel more confident and less stressed about money. I believe financial well-being starts with simple, practical conversations about money that make sense. This podcast is produced for Atwood House Community Centre with the support of Hume City Council. Today, my guest on Community Sense podcast is Suanne Russell. Suanne is the lead ombudsman for small business at the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, and otherwise known as AFCA. Suanne plays a key role in overseeing how AFCA handles small business complaints about financial services and products, including one of the biggest issues that face Australians at the moment, and that's scams and financial losses. And that's our subject for today's podcast. Welcome, Suanne. I really appreciate your
You?
time today. As you work with AFCA, which is the
Mhm.
Australian Financial Complaints Authority.
Mhm.
Can you explain what AFCA are, how they work, and what the consumers can benefit from their existence?
Okay, thanks so much. Basically, AFCA is the independent not-for-profit that helps resolve financial disputes between consumers. So that's individuals and small business and financial firms. It's free to the consumer and it's overseen by ASIC, which is the Australian Securities Investment Commission, and they're really the conduct regulator for financial services.
Right. So, um, why this topic matters of what we're doing at the moment is that scams can affect anyone. And part of this podcast is just to put out awareness of what people can do. And we've all heard that somebody's been scammed. It seems like scams are literally just everywhere and they're much more sophisticated, or they seem to be getting very sophisticated. What's really happening out there and how can we protect ourselves?
Well, I guess, where we sit, we're only going to see the tip of the iceberg. Unfortunately, it takes someone to bring a complaint to AFCA for us to see their scam.
Hmm.
But the kind of scams we see the most of are still buyer seller scams, and they're often the lower amount scams. But they tend to occur on social media style platforms like Facebook Marketplace, things like that, or Gumtree, those kind of things. We do see a lot of impersonation scams, and probably the most, insidious of those are the bank impersonation scams.
Oh,
I know, and investment scams and romance scams. And of course, those ones are the ones that tend to be the largest sums of money because the scammers invest a lot of time and energy in those, and they can often go on for quite some time.
right. Okay. And so when they get a scam, it's such a
Mm,
disgusting,
mm,
horrible, stomach sinking thing. And
exactly.
you go, how could I have fallen for this? Or how did it happen?
Mm.
At what point do you find people coming to you at AFCA?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say about that is people should not be embarrassed. There is a scam out there for everyone, and I worry about that, even myself. And
Oh,
we've had, as people lodging complaints with us, we've had CEOs, we've had all kinds of people, from all walks of life. So the first thing is you should not be embarrassed. And I
mm,
think that can often be a barrier to people bringing a complaint. They think they're somehow to blame. What you have to remember is these are sophisticated, organized criminals operating at a scale you cannot believe.
yeah.
They're often also doing drugs, money laundering, sex trafficking. This is just another thing that is part of that enterprise. They
Mm,
have the most incredible technology and they are constantly evolving. I think you talked about them being sophisticated. We can certainly see how that changes all the time. So
mm,
don't be embarrassed. If you've been scammed, the faster you act, the better off you are. Immediately call your
mm.
financial firm and see if anything can be done to maybe stop or pause a payment. Also, it's important to report them. I used to think perhaps, reporting was a waste of time because I get it. You're not going to get your money back through reporting it. but it is really important in terms of understanding the types of scams that are out there, plus also what needs to be done to prevent it, because you don't see the scale if people don't report.
Well, I suppose that makes sense, doesn't it? Because if you
Mm,
don't report it, you don't know what's out there.
mm,
Then the people that are trying to prevent scams don't know that they're out there to need to prevent them and to block things as
exactly.
well. Yeah? Okay. And that's the whole thing about the embarrassment and that. I see it all through financial industries, people not
Mm,
wanting to tell their family that they're in trouble,
mm,
not wanting to say to people, "Don't buy us Christmas presents, we can't buy anything. I don't want to admit
mm,
that I don't have the money." All
mm,
those sorts of things that come up through that guilt about not
mm,
having money and then getting caught in a scam of whatever it might be. It's so, yeah,
yeah.
crippling for people
It
to.
is indeed. I
Mm,
mean, I think you can say it definitely does. We see it destroying people's lives. It is a crime. You see people losing their retirement. So
mm,
a person's life can change very quickly. With a lot of other financial hardship, it happens slowly over a period of time. It maybe allows the person to adjust a little more.
mm,
Here, you can lose your entire life savings in a space of minutes. And we do see that. I mean, I've had a matter where I saw a woman 74 returning to the workforce. It's heartbreaking. Yeah.
yeah, 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 and that is it, isn't it? How do they get around that?
Yeah.
It's interesting the romance scams are still out there, and I suppose they're always going to be there. I suppose they've always
Yeah.
been there, haven't
Yeah.
they? And
I
they've got
mean,
no integrity.
no, I mean, there are things that we have learnt, doing this kind of work. And I mean, there are people who are trafficked to do this
Mm,
work, just the same as, sex trafficking and other things. And I guess, unfortunately, you've got to look at those people as also being victims.
yeah.
But we've also encountered, and I can recall a particular recording that we got of a scammer discovered mid scam because the person's had the presence of mind to call their bank and had the scammer on the phone because they started to get suspicious. And then the language and the way this person spoke, being the kind of person who was obviously deeply involved in the scam and was quite happy and had no regard to what
Mm,
they're doing to the person. So you see all sides of it. It is
right.
it is quite shocking, I guess.
What's the process with AFCA? How does it work? So I approach you and I've seen
Mm.
this, I've got caught up in this scam. What's the steps that go along from there?
Sure. After people lodge their complaint with us, there are some formal steps we have to go through to make sure that we can look at the claim.
Yeah.
We can only look at claims up to a certain amount, for example, and things like that. So once it gets accepted into our process, then we investigate. And that involves getting information from the financial firm,
Mhm.
because what we're really looking at here is what happened and therefore who could be responsible. When we look at a scam complaint, we generally look at, was it authorized or was it unauthorized? And that's a really important distinction, because if it is what we call unauthorized, and that means that the person wasn't aware that it occurred or had nothing to do with it. Unfortunately, it's not unauthorized if you did it yourself or got someone to do it, and all that happened was it went to a scammer instead of who you
Mm,
thought you were paying. Unfortunately, that's still categorized as authorized. But if it is unauthorized, then we look at the e-payments code. Now, the e-payments code only covers consumer accounts and transactions, and only if you're a member of that. But if you are, then that sets out a regime for reimbursement that is available. However, it won't be, for example, if you've shared the majority of your passcodes and things like that. Now, if that code doesn't apply or if the payment's authorised, then we look at the terms and conditions. We also look at the conduct of the bank. Did the bank do something wrong? And really, what that means is if you look at all of the circumstances and your interactions with the bank, were they put on notice that there was something not right here? And
mm,
should they have asked some questions? And the idea is that in asking those questions, they go far enough until, a reasonable banker acting appropriately would have been satisfied.
What's the e-payments code? Can you clarify
Yeah, sure.
that?
The e-payments code is a voluntary code that most of the banks have signed up to. It does a lot of things. It governs electronic payments in Australia. So it wasn't really designed or intended to be used in the scam landscape. It was much more meant to be around providing people disclosure around electronic payments, fees, charges, those sorts of things, plus also introducing a regime if you make an accidental or a mistaken payment. So, for example, fat fingered error, I hit the wrong number. And it has a
An extra
regime.
zero.
Yeah, yeah, and it has a regime for how you get a refund in those
Right.
scenarios. But it also has provisions around keeping passcodes secure and things like that, and looks at circumstances in which, if you voluntarily, they use the term, gave away your passcodes or most of the passcodes, then unfortunately you won't get compensation under that regime if it was an unauthorized scam.
Okay, so is the e-payments code a banking subscription or is it something as a personal person?
No, it is regulated by ASIC,
Mhm.
and yes, the banks tend to be the majority of members, but it also can be some of the payment people are members as well,
Right.
because it's electronic payments. So anyone in the business of electronic
Right.
payments.
So if I'm a business and I'm paying through electronic payments,
Mm, yeah, but then it's probably going to be your bank that's the,
okay. So it's
yeah,
not the
yeah.
Joe
No,
Blow.
like, other people that it might be Wise or someone like that, or,
Right.
those kind of
Oh,
things.
yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Not the
but I'm not sure if
traditional
they
format.
actually are, but
Right.
it's that kind of payment service,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No,
Prepaid.
great. Okay.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
one level of
Mm.
security as well, isn't it? For them to
Yeah,
have that
yeah.
there and safety. What's the timeline process for I come to you,
Well,
put in the effort, you say,
sure.
yes, we can look at it.
Our average for the scam complaints is around 65 days, but I need to tell you that we do have complaints. That's if your complaint is pretty straightforward, you've all the information's easy to gather, and there aren't, a tremendous number of issues. Um, some of the much more complex matters, they would take a lot longer to go through AFCA. I mean, AFCA is meant to be about giving, fast, efficient service in
Yeah.
terms of resolving your complaint. The objective is to keep it down that end of the lesser time. We are happy to settle or resolve the complaint at any time through our process. So just to finish off, what happens is after the
Yeah.
complaint has been lodged, it's investigated, then there'll be opportunities for us to organise, say, conciliations or to try and negotiate with the financial firm on your behalf. If none of that works, then a preliminary view can be given to you,
Mhm.
and if neither party or either party don't accept that preliminary view, then the matter will go through to decision.
Right.
And that's where you get a decision by an adjudicator if it's a simple matter, or an ombudsman if it's more complex. In this space, probably about 4 to 5% of the complaints go through to decision. So surprisingly, a huge number resolve at the very first stage of our process before we've done anything. That's
Mhm.
called registration and referral. At one point, I think we're up to about 73% of our complaints resolving there. And that does kind of raise the question of, if all it took was to lodge the complaint with AFCA, why didn't it get resolved beforehand? Though, to be fair, we don't always know how it resolved at that point, because we don't have that information because we haven't done anything yet.
Right. And is that
Yeah.
like beforehand at the bank level? I know that I've been a victim of,
Mm,
and I go to the bank and I say, what's this
mm.
UK charge on something or out, and they've resolved it. So does that
Yeah,
mean that
I
it's
mean,
been
that's
resolved
the
beforehand?
ideal.
Mm,
That's the ideal. AFCA doesn't want complaints.
no.
We're there as that external process to help you if you don't get a resolution, but
Mm,
ideally, Banks have internal dispute resolution, they're required to now, and we hope that things resolve there.
Mm.
And I mean, the easier matters it tends to be when they're a little bit more complex that they don't.
Yeah, and so AFCA is an external dispute
That's right.
resolution, aren't you?
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
if it's not been able to be resolved in-house
that's
in the
right.
internal with the bank, then
Yeah,
AFCA is the external. Mhm.
that's right. Yeah.
There's buyer-seller scams you said before as well. So
Yeah.
that like the Facebook Marketplace where people
Yeah.
like cash at delivery only and not in the bank transfers, all those things, is that part of it?
Um, I mean, the way those scams tend to work is, you see something that you want to buy, and it can be that the website itself is fake. Um,
Oh,
and it's very clever. And so, really, you're never going to get the item that you ordered. You're going to put all your details in, including credit card details, and they're then going to be used to either get further credit to the limit of that card, or it can be that they are just phishing for what will then be a later scam. I think one of the things that's becoming clearer to us when we do this work is the long tail for scams. And the scammers are very patient. And because they're doing this on an industrial scale, they're quite happy to gather information from different areas. So, for example, there could have been a cyber breach, and they might just get elementary things like name, address, stuff like that. They might be lucky they got some credit card details. Then they might be able to have enough information to use those to phone the bank, pretend to be you, and get elicit more. Or, you know, eventually from a couple of sources, they might have enough information. So when they contact the person, they can sound like they know the person, sound like they are from the bank, because they can say, "Oh, I can see your credit card ending whatever has a balance of, 5,000." And, that immediately lulls the person into a sense of, I am really speaking to my bank.
good one.
Plus, they use things like the hold music that you would hear at your bank. And they might even have the same options, press one for this, press two for that. And so it's all designed, and this is what we talk about, the increasing sophistication,
Mm, yeah.
and a lot of those bank ones had a SMS that was in the chain of SMSs from your bank.
I
So,
don't understand how that happens, like,
yeah, yeah.
anyway, yeah. I know I've heard of that being done where it's in the same
Mm,
SMS
mm.
conversation that I do get from my bank.
Exactly.
They're very
Exactly.
sophisticated, you're right.
Yeah. So, really, I mean, the kind of thing that we always say to people about this, and it's easy, never ever phone the number that's in those SMSs, never ever click on those links.
Mhm,
Always independently go and look up the organization that is claiming to have sent you that SMS, and find that separate number, because if
mm,
it's unsolicited, you don't know. It may well be that they needed to speak to you, but you'll find that out when you use the independent means of contacting them. But never do it the other way, because you just can get into this web, and it's very convincing, very convincing.
and hopefully the website that you looked up for that number is actually
Well, that's
correct
another
and
issue,
everything.
but
Oh, the
yeah, you
the
do need to
webs
be,
and the
yeah, exactly,
sophistication. Yeah, exactly
exactly.
right.
Yeah,
Is there more of a trend, like, coming up to Christmas? Is there more of a trend of
sure.
certain
Yeah.
frauds, scams and things, or is it just all
There
year?
is definitely, seasonal,
Mhm.
and I can't remember where I was the other day, but, one of the telcos was telling us it was, that there were no, scam phone numbers and SMSs on Christmas Day. So even scammers take a break. But definitely for the banks and for everyone, the sort of high periods are, as you say, whenever you're coming up to something like an Easter, Christmas, this whole Black Friday sales that we
Mm,
now have, like in the US, that's a very big period for the buyer seller scams and the fake websites. I think you've just got to be really careful about buying things from websites you haven't used before, and really, make sure that you're happy that
Right.
that is the website and those sorts of things.
Mm. The third party product, I suppose it is, like
Mm.
PayPal, is that an advantage, like a what would you call it, a barrier between or a safety space or not really?
Not No, not unfortunately, not
Mm,
necessarily. I mean, it's just a payment service. You can use it, but then, you do see people, um, being able to manipulate that. Like, scammers sometimes like to receive payments through PayPal because they're instant, and they can't be well, they're not necessarily instant, sorry, but they're not able to be stopped until they're completed, and so, like a number of payments that are out there, and so it means that they probably get the money and shift it, and it interposes, sort of another, sort of step as well. So
mm.
I don't think you can really say that anything is safer than anything else.
No, okay, fair
I
enough.
mean, everything is very safe if you're just paying what you intend to and what you should be. It's unfortunate. It's the manipulation of the scammers
Mm,
really that gets people.
yeah. Well, as a broker, uh, it's always really important to say, "Do not pay your deposit based on an email link," and
Absolutely.
and
Um,
because your deposit there's a scam where they just track
Absolutely.
conveyances, and it
Yeah.
yeah,
They tend to, I mean, they're the email compromise scams,
right.
and they tend to do it to all of those, I guess, industries where there's going to be a big payment for something. So conveyancing is an excellent target. Real estate agents, as you say, potentially brokers, anything like that. And so, absolutely, if there's any change of payment details
Mm.
from the details you were given in person by the broker or anybody else,
No,
you triple check.
yeah,
And I mean, the two ways they tend to do it is they'll actually intercept the real email and
mm,
change the bank account details. And so they'll be different to what you may have previously been told, or they can actually create a new email, but there'll always be some slight difference with those ones. But it's very hard to spot, like it might be just, for example, Law Connect, but there's one N, or
mm,
and then it's .net or something instead of .au, or there's little things, but you, as a casual observer or user, you don't scrutinize those things. But unfortunately, I guess the answer is, if you're making a really big payment, you should. One of the things that will help people now is confirmation of payee,
mm,
because that came in around July this year. It hasn't come in across every financial firm. Some of the smaller ones won't have it till the end of this year.
what
And
does that
it's
one
not,
do? Sorry?
well, what it's all about is, if I say to you, I'm paying Joe Bloggs, then the technology will look at the account I'm paying and it will
Oh,
come
yes.
back and say, "Stop, pay attention. You're actually paying Joe Green,
Mm,
and, that's not who you told us you were paying. Warning, go away, check, find out." Now, at the moment, that's going to be really fantastic and really successful, but unfortunately, I'm sure the scammers are going to work out a way to explain why you're paying this different person. But again, I think you've just got to always really be on alert. Like, why would that change? It shouldn't change, that
mm.
kind of thing. Um,
Does
a
that
lot
mean
of
that I
banks.
now have to type in the exact name of the account?
Well, this is one of the issues that it's given rise to. That obviously, to get 100% match, you've got to have the spelling, you've got to have everything correct.
Mm,
So, for example, I might have one bank account that's Suanne Russell. I
yeah.
might have one that's Suanne M. Russell, or
Mm,
something like that. And initially, I think there's teething issues around whether that's a match or not. But I think that those things will get worked out and ironed out as it progresses. And I guess people will default to a standard way of referring to themselves on their accounts just to make life easier. Yeah.
Well, this is it, like, one of my accounts is the trustee of the trust of whatever,
Mm,
it's
mm.
like it's my business account,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I just always put P Northeast, it's
Yeah, yeah.
so if
But
that's gonna hold up my money, I better, click on that.
Well, see, those kind of things initially but I guess that's another issue that the response by the financial firms to a lot of these scams and is to put more friction into
Yeah.
payments. Like we have been pushing as consumers for faster and faster payments. We got MPP,
We're
OSCO,
our own worst enemy.
instant, instant. Instant means you can't recover in a
Mm,
scam scenario. But then, we also see, ironically, complaints where my payment was held up,
mm,
my payment didn't get through, those kind of things. So I think the answer is we are going to have to accept more friction than we used to have. And I think certain types of payments, like first time payments to crypto platforms, or
right.
I've never paid crypto before, or I've now paid more than $10,000 a month to a crypto account, those kind of things. Most of the banks have now got some sort of restrictions over, and we do see both sides. We see the people complaining about the restriction, and we see those that want those restrictions where their firm may not have them yet. And I
Right.
think that our view on those is, unfortunately, because of all the scams, we think friction is probably a reasonable step for financial firms to take.
It is that thing, isn't it? It's like, yes, hold up my money for a little bit, but, I don't wanna lose the investment that I could have got because it was
Exactly.
an
That's
instant
right.
payment as
That's right.
well.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you're the good and the bad.
Mm,
Mm.
mm,
And we quickly spoke before about the devastation of a 70
mm,
plus year old woman needing to go back to work. What other impacts do you see around that? Is it, um, well, as you said, life
mm,
savings and
mm.
family trauma would go through that, wouldn't it?
That's right. I
Mm,
mean, I can't imagine how it would feel. You've reached retirement, you've worked your entire life, you've been really diligent with the super and all of that, and it's just gone. And then you
right.
face a really uncertain future on the pension, or something worse.
Mm,
Like you may not even have a home and you might be relying on rental, and now you can't even rent anymore. It is just absolutely crippling and beyond belief that people can, do that to another person. But there's also other things like a total lack of confidence in your trust. And then sometimes this can be the trigger that the family says, well, you can't be trusted anymore. Give me a power of
oh,
attorney, like we can't let you be banking by yourself. And so I think those kind of things are really hard for people. But surprisingly, the most targeted, well, most scams occur in the sort of 39 to about 50 age group. So
is
you
it?
would have
Oh,
thought that it would be the over 70s.
mm,
And whilst they are probably the second largest group, they are not the largest group. But unfortunately, it tends to be the largest sums of money because, you've got
don't
maybe
have the money.
a self-managed super fund account or larger pools of retirement funds sitting there.
Mm.
So much more attractive to the scammers because the scammers are always looking for, large, attractive
Oh,
account
bigger
types.
payday. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Rotten things. So,
Mm.
is there a trend on the different sorts of scams between the different age groups?
That's an interesting question, but not I haven't really seen that,
Mm,
no. Because, even, romance scams had a particularly, sad one with an older lady. Um, in fact, I've seen quite a few with older women or, even men, it's not I
mm.
didn't mean to indicate that it was
I don't know.
a
No.
female only thing, but unfortunately, it I can't think of a scam that, necessarily is targeted to a particular, demographic
demographic.
from our
Yeah, because
perspective. It may well be if we look at the world scams, there is, but not sort of the way and what we see. Yeah.
that's just basically anyone that's got some money in their pocket,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, no,
Mm,
fair enough. So, how far down the track for the reimbursement, as I said before, is it
mm.
authorised or unauthorised?
Yeah.
Is there a fine line, or is it pretty dry cut, or it just
Well, sometimes it's more difficult,
mm,
to work out if a payment was authorized or not. Um, and so, there can be quite a bit of time gathering
mm,
information to make that decision.
yeah,
In terms of the outcomes, generally speaking, where you have done the transaction yourself, no matter what misapprehension you are under, or you've had someone else do it for you, there's less chance of finding a reason why you would get reimbursed. In those
right,
scenarios, it really does tend to be that the bank has done something wrong.
mm,
For example, they might have alerted and chosen not to contact you to discuss it, or there just might have been a whole series of things that, taken as a whole, should have indicated to the bank something was going on here and they
right,
should have made an inquiry. But overall, I think about 53% of the complaints that come to us get partial or full recovery.
yeah,
But the
okay,
full recovery figure is obviously quite low compared to, um,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and, full recovery might be your 20 bucks, or it could be 200,000. There's a big difference
exactly.
between that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
The, scam prevention framework that
Yes,
passed this year, was it?
that's
Can
right.
you cover what that is and what
Sure,
it's all about? And
sure.
have we touched base on some of those things already maybe as well?
Sure. The scam prevention, I mean, well, let me say before I start that it's a response to the fact that I think from the things we've discussed already on this
Yeah.
call, it's not that satisfactory at the moment in terms of when someone does have an opportunity to be reimbursed. It's not very clear cut. At the moment, mostly people go to their bank because, after all, that's where the payment gets
Mhm.
made. So, the scam prevention framework is actually quite unique. It's world leading because it's an attempt to look at the entire sort of environment, if you like, of it, and life cycle of scams. So, in the beginning, what has happened is it came in February this year, and it will be done as an amendment to the Australian Consumer uh, Competition Law.
Mhm.
And what it will do is it will make obligations on sectors that are going to be designated under it. So far, the government said we're going to designate the first three sectors. They're going to be the telcos, the banks, and the social media platforms.
Uh-huh.
And when they're designated, what it'll mean is that they will have sector specific codes that they have to adhere to, and that will sit under the framework of this scam prevention framework. It does contain some very high level obligations about requiring anybody who ultimately gets designated, because the plan is to keep adding new sectors. So probably they'll add in superannuation
Mm.
and things like that, and the payment service providers. And you can see there could be a number of them. And when they do get joined, they'll have their own sector specific code. But basically, it will create obligations to take reasonable steps to avoid, disrupt scams. It's also got reporting requirements. It also sets up the kind of governance structure that everyone should have around scams and preventing scams, and how they should respond to scams. So basically, we're not sure yet what the rules that are going to give life to this are, and the actual codes themselves, because they haven't been issued. We're not sure of the timeline either because I think the government's working on that. Obviously, having the election, having new government and a new minister meant that it had to be sort of, I guess, slowed down a little bit. But there's quite a lot of action happening at the moment. And so we're waiting to find out what the anticipated timelines for this will be. AFCA has been told by the government that it will be designated as the EDR scheme for the first three sectors. So that's going to be a huge change for us because we've only ever looked at financial services. Now we're going to have to look at the actions of the telcos and at the actions of the social media platforms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
That's
basically,
that just
yeah,
blows the industry out so much,
exactly.
doesn't it?
That's right. So if a
Uh,
person comes in that future with a scam complaint, we'll be able to look at, should the telco have done something
mm,
more to stop maybe a number getting through to them or an SMS or something like that getting through to them? Then we can look at, well, and what did the bank do? Did it do what it was meant to do? And then, obviously, if, for example, it was an ad um, in on Facebook or something like that that the person responded to, should Facebook have taken down that ad? Should they have known that it was a scam ad?
mm,
So there's going to be a spreading, I guess, of the liability across the entities that allow the scam to come through to the consumer. And so it will be interesting
that's oh, yeah, I'm just
because the one thing that everyone agrees on is it's got to be easy for the consumer. They've got to be able to walk in any door and get the compensation that they'd be entitled to,
mm,
um, and that the process will need to be quite efficient and speedy for them.
mm.
So that's what everyone's looking at and working on at the moment.
There's so many, cloned social media profiles and
Yeah.
businesses, and you think you're doing the right thing, you've been talking to them, and then you find one that looks exactly the same, but it's
Mm,
not, and you can report it, but it's still there a week later.
yeah.
So as much
Yeah.
as you report it, so will this then bring the social media platform to a much higher accountability to get that removed quicker?
I can only say I think everyone hopes so.
I
I
love it.
mean,
Yeah.
definitely, because, I think there'll be a number of things. I mean, I don't know
Mm,
what the content's going to be, but you'd imagine that one of the things you might do is make sure that someone lodging an ad or something like that is identified so
yeah.
that, you've got a reasonable suspicion that there's nothing wrong, wrong with them. They're a normal person. They've given maybe
Mm,
a driver's license or something like that. They exist, that they're legitimate, that sort of thing. I can
yeah.
imagine you'd do that. And then, of course, most important would be a really speedy takedown of some of this stuff,
Yeah.
rather than allowing things to sit there for 3 weeks after they've been reported or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, fair enough. It just blows my mind with the amount of work that's coming to AFCA's way and how your expansion's going to go and how you're gonna
Yeah.
navigate that, but it's
I
all
guess
for our
that
benefit. Mm,
well, one of the things that is going to be very important, I think, is when these codes are done, that they are very clear obligations with clear consequences. Because, of course, we don't want to receive all of these complaints. What our desire would be is that if those rules are really clear and the compensation and how it might get shared between the
mm,
responsible entities there, um, then that will be able to be done, in that internal dispute resolution process like it is today,
mm,
so that we don't end up with literally thousands of complaints. So I think that's something that everybody who's involved in those sectors is focusing on and thinking about at the moment. And hopefully, whatever gets put in place will ensure that that can happen and that we're not overwhelmed.
no, fair enough, fair enough. we've covered all sorts of things on how to prevent being scammed, being aware of what you're clicking on. Don't click on the messages, don't click on the links, all those things themselves. Top tips for people to be protected, just be aware, and if it feels dodgy,
Mhm.
and I often speak of in my money management, of the pause. I'm walking towards the
Absolutely.
bakery and I think I'd really like a cream bun, but I'm actually trying to lose weight. Or I shouldn't buy another towel because I've got 50 towels at home. And there's
Mm,
this pause in this head that says, no, don't do it. So
mm,
listen to that pause. And I would
definitely.
imagine that people have this second thought, would they?
It's
If
hard
you
to
start to
say,
listen to it? Yeah.
but I think that sometimes, at some point, if things, are going a bit strange, then
Mm,
people do, and when they do, that's fantastic. So sometimes people will come to us and they might have been 3 or 4 transactions in and that happens, but at least it prevented the rest of it.
mm,
But definitely, I don't think there's any substitute for that stopping and thinking and consult someone.
mm.
Ask your friends, ask your family,
Yeah.
because that circuit breaker can sometimes even break that spell of the scammer. And I do not underestimate how difficult it is to get out from under the spell of the scammers. They've got an answer for everything. They use psychological tactics. They're very, very skilled.
Mm,
But, sometimes that conversation with a friend or someone, even a professional, your accountant or someone, can be a circuit breaker and can stop them. So, absolutely, the stop and think before you act
mm.
is huge.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I also think that, if you look at scams and you think, what else? I think there's very, very few legitimate reasons for giving anybody remote access to either your computer or to your phone.
Mm,
And again, I think this whole fear thing that gets generated by, and I've seen some of these scams, they're horrific. Like you'll get a danger symbol appearing on your computer, and this awful noise gets emitted, and it's sort of like, act right now, phone this number, or click on this, or whatever, or everything will be wiped from your hard drive, or
oh
these sorts of
gosh.
fear things. And then the person phones that number and the person says, "Well, you've been subject to a hacking. We need to look in everything in your computer to make sure that it's okay, shut it down. We'd better start with your bank accounts, make sure they're safe. Can you log into internet banking?" And of course, the whole purpose there has been to see what your passcodes are so that then they'll say, after a few more minutes of mucking around, "Look, I'm going to be working on your computer for the next couple of hours. Go and have a cup of coffee, leave it alone, whatever, and the money will just be gone when you come back." Or sometimes people just see it starting to disappear, transactions on the screen. There is no such thing as needing to move your money to a safe account. If there really was something horrific happening and your money disappeared from the bank would be responsible. So leave the money there. These are the things that I just cannot emphasize enough.
No, no,
Be
no. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. The struggle, the not the struggles, the intrigue and how they go about things and
Mm.
getting on. Oh, goodness, that's scary. Okay.
And I guess once you've been scanned, do take your devices to a professional place to get them cleaned. Do not think that's over. We did see one where the bank said to us that they thought there was remote access, and we just could not get the person to go and get the device cleaned. It was just ridiculous, because we said so many times, you really need to go and get this device cleaned or checked. And,
Mhm.
people don't. You really need to. And
Right.
it's quite good if at the time you do it, you get a report of what they found. because we often get
Yeah.
people that go and do it, and then they don't get a report, and so we don't know what happened. Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, so
Yeah.
that's good to know too. So
Yeah.
if you've had anything suspicious, would that even be, like, if you've had, um, you know
Well, it just depends. You
yeah,
can't I think it's better to be safe than sorry,
mm,
because, people, unfortunately, in this state of stress that you then get in, it's not that they want to not tell you what happened, they can't remember.
yeah,
So they literally can't remember sometimes if they did click on something or
mm,
whatever, because that can download some malware. So it's best to just go and have it checked, and then, everyone knows. And the worst thing that can happen is you go and have it checked and there's nothing there.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough. So
Mm.
one key thing from takeaway from today's conversation, would you like awareness? What would you think?
Yeah,
What would you
I
understand?
think I've used my one key thing, which is never move your money to a
Yeah,
safe
well, this is
account.
true too.
But I think, unfortunately, and this is a really terrible thing to say, because you want to be in a society where you can trust others and where things
Mm,
appear to be what they are on face value. But I think, unfortunately, where it comes to our money matters, we need to be on alert all
yeah,
the time. And if something is different, or someone contacts you out of the blue, question it, you
yeah,
know? And if it really was your bank, you will find out when you go through another channel and get to them. I can't stress it enough.
no,
Just be alert. And if something's feeling uncomfortable, don't do it, you know?
yeah. If
Yeah,
your hairs are on the back of your neck, don't do it.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
fair enough. And AFCA is an Australia-wide
It
service.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and
And so basically, our membership is generally made up of people that hold either an Australian financial services license, which relates to certain financial products like deposit accounts and things like that, or if they have an Australian credit license, which relates to the lending side.
mm,
But we also have members that are subscribers to different codes, like small businesses to the AFIA online. It used to be that code, it's just now a general AFIA code. Not every financial firm is an AFCA member, but for the purposes of scams, they generally will be and are,
mm,
because anybody that's a bank or has, facility for to hold accounts tends to be an AFCA member because they have to
yeah,
be. Yeah.
my hand up. Well, as a broker, I have AFCA as my EDR, my external
Yeah,
dispute
absolutely. That's
resolution,
right. Yeah,
and I'm grateful I've never had a call to
that's
them
right.
to call
Yeah,
on you,
yeah.
but it's there for my security and
Mm,
my client's security as
mm,
well.
that's right. Yeah,
Safety, no,
yeah, yeah,
comfort, comfort more than
yeah.
security.
I mean, the way I look at it is, if you are a financial firm that operates a fair business in the market, look, sometimes things go wrong.
Yeah,
Not every uh, transaction can be perfect, not every interaction can be perfect. But generally speaking, we find, you don't have any issues or
mm,
problems, it's,
no, no.
yeah,
There'd be a shake-up in industries if it was very common type
yeah.
thing, but yeah. So, thank you, Suanne. I really do appreciate your time today. This has been a wonderful gift and highlight for the podcast that we've got coming up. Scams can happen to anyone, but the knowledge and awareness of them are your best defense. So,
Absolutely.
there is support out there, and we really do appreciate your time with that. Have I covered everything? Have we covered everything you
I
wanted to
think we
discuss?
have. I'm just really thank
Oh,
you so
yeah.
much for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. I hope it wasn't too complex, though.
Oh, no,
It
no,
tends to
no,
be a bit
no. I think that,
complex.
um,
Yeah,
the podcast is about general awareness. And
yeah,
while a lot of people may not need to know about the framework that's going on,
yeah,
it's also good to know it's there. But, I get so engrossed in this that I
No,
don't
no, and
remember
I'm
what we've
very happy
said.
to, as you can tell, I could talk about this topic for days.
It's money. I could talk about it for days.
I know, I know. It is really interesting, isn't it? How, and I think it's because um, it is so intrinsic to life. I mean, it's so incredible that banking is not an essential service.
Oh, yes.
It's really interesting. And I do think this is a huge thing for well-being of people because I can tell you the well-being of those that are scammed is non-existent. Like they just, it knocks them forever.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And there's
I
this weird thing, like all the regulators and stuff, they talk about moral hazard of, if we did have a mandatory reimbursement framework, say like the UK, um, I think if you have dealt with scam victims, you'd know there are criminals, right? Leave the criminals aside, but the normal person cannot go through this more than once, you know?
no.
It's
Mm,
taken years literally of their life and really damaged their, confidence. They're not gonna go through to get what? To lose the money and get it back again? No.
mm. And it's not just the individual, it's the
Yeah.
family around that,
Oh, and
and then the
some of the
devastation,
sums
and I can
are
imagine, like,
huge,
we all know that money is a major cause of divorce
and depression,
and
and
depression and
yeah.
suicide.
I mean, it's just life-changing.
Yeah. Um, yeah, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your time. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Alright?
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. I
Great.
really appreciate your time, Suanne.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye. Such an important conversation. Scams are becoming more sophisticated every day. But as Suanne shared, knowledge really is our best defense. Stay alert, stay informed, and don't be afraid to ask questions if something doesn't feel right. Thanks for joining us today.